We are delighted to speak with author Jermul Huggins. Jermul first discovered her love for the arts and began writing poetry at age 9. She is now a published author of the book, You Are My Sister, Not My Competition. This book is a self-help guide to putting an end to the never-ending cycle of competition among women. Not that I would know anything about that. And so this is why we're going to find out more about it now. Welcome to Good Morning, SKN.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
welcome. It's nice to be here.
All right, so congratulations, first of all, on becoming a published author. We're going to delve right into that. The book has been available for about a month now.
Yes.
All right, so what has the feedback been so far? What has the experience been like for you?
The experience has actually been really overwhelming. I've been a ghostwriter for about 12 years. So it's interesting when you've had work on the market that no one knows you're responsible for. And then you finally decide to put your name to something, because I used to always go back and look at reviews and things like that from some of the stuff that I actually contributed on. But now I'm scared to look at the reviews for my own work, because it's one thing to see people judge and kind of give their feedback on someone else's work when they think it's someone else's work. But now that it's my own, everything is just so much more personal. Okay. But the feedback has been amazing, because the very first review that I got was someone pretty much sending me a message personally after they put up a review on Amazon UK. And I was like, I can't see it here in the US. They were like, well, because it's on Amazon UK. And her experiences were, there's a chapter in the book where you talk about being a child and how children and adults can be so mean. And she said, my children are currently in school, and the stories that they come home with and they talk to me about daily, sometimes it just makes me cry. And so it was getting feedback like that that really made me go, I knew I had to write this book, but this is really why I wrote this book. And I'm glad that this was the project I chose to put my name on. Yeah.
I want to know, before we go into anything else, are the books available in the bookstore here in St. Kitts?
Not as yet.
Okay.
But there will be.
Okay.
I'm looking to have that done here.
All right, so let's focus on the title. And again, why you had to write that book. That review, you gave us a little insight into why you felt you had to write that book. But the title itself is so catchy, and it tends to indicate that there are so many issues that women face when they're dealing with other women. The title again, You Are My Sister, Not My Competition.
Yeah.
If we could break this down, the word sister and competition, why those words?
I'll start with the last word first. Competition. I come from a background of pageantry that started here in St. Kitts. And what I realized very quickly when I left St. Kitts at 18 was that competition wasn't just exclusive to the stage. It was happening off stage, and it was right in our faces. It was happening in school. It was happening within my family dynamic. It was happening to me as an adult. And then what started happening was when I began healing myself, my own personal traumas, my own personal resentments, my own insecurities, the relationships with the women around me began healing themselves. And then I started realizing that the deflection that I was kind of putting out there and always pointing at other women as the problem, well, she doesn't like me because of this, or she has a problem with me because of that. Oftentimes, we don't look inside first, and we tend to see the insecurities that we're struggling with in other women, but because ours are shielded, ours are very incubated because they're kind of in the closet, but another woman's skeletons might be more exposed. So it's very easy to kind of go, well, look at what she's doing, but no one knows that you're probably struggling with the same thing. So when I started to heal myself, the relationships around me began healing. And then I took a trip to South Africa, and I realized here are these women in a completely different country, halfway across the world, and we're experiencing the same things in different ways. And then they began referring to me as sister. And I thought there was something that resonated with me. There was something that struck a chord with me when that word was used to refer to me, because I was only used to that from my blood sisters. And there's a feeling of love and loyalty and respect and compassion when it comes to your blood relatives. So to have another woman who was not related to me by blood refer to me as sister, I thought, what if we could all migrate from this place of competition to this place of real sisterhood? There was just such a warmth and such a love there that it was something I had to hold on to. And that was about 8 years ago. I had the title for the book and no idea what I was going to write. Absolutely none. But it nagged at me. It would not let go of me. And eventually I said, I'm not going to give this title away, because as you know, as writers and even as ghostwriters, sometimes you have concepts, you have ideas, and it's very easy to sell an idea and just make the money off it and have someone else go off with the concept. But this one would not let me go, and I think it needed to be written, and it needed to be written by me.
Good stuff. You said most of the relationships were mended. I want to know the relationship with the big cousin. Was that one mended?
That one was attempted.
Okay.
There was definitely attempt, but and I say that in the book as well. We can't force the readiness or the willingness of another person to take accountability for their role in how they've made you feel. Okay. So at some point, the best closure we can give ourselves is simply knowing that we tried to mend those fences. Accept the fact that you're responsible for your own feelings, they're responsible for their own, you're responsible for the way you respond to that other person's feelings. You accept that they hurt you, accept that they are human and they make mistakes. You forgive yourself, you forgive them, and you simply move on. And well that's how I dealt with that one.
Well said indeed.
We're talking about, and I can appreciate why this book, Jermul, is a self-help guide, because it's not necessarily the most palatable thing for women to talk about. You're talking about introspection. You're talking about accepting that you might be the problem and not someone else, and gauging your reaction. So changing your reactions to them. There are a couple of chapters in this book that I would like your take on. The titles, I'll just read them. Birth of a Resentment. What's that?
So Birth of a Resentment goes through where I began really struggling with my own insecurities and putting that blame that I was talking about earlier on different areas of my life, different people. I grew up here in St. Kitts, and I was a part of pageants, I was a part of the music scene, and I got a lot of backlash as a child. And oftentimes I felt, I don't think they realize that I'm still a child. I'm female, yes, and I'm out there and I'm exposed, but I'm still very much a child with a child's heart and the innocence that comes with all of that. So things like being on stage and performing and having people criticize, well, she's not dancing enough like Alison Hines. And you're putting me now in a category where now I'm looking at Alison Hines and building a little bit of jealousy because I can't do what she's doing. And that's who you're comparing me to. See, a lot of the times as women, the comparison doesn't just come, we don't just create these feelings out of nowhere. Because if someone doesn't walk into a room and tell you that you have a large nose and you've been going along just fine with it, you're not picking at your nose until someone points that out as a problem. And so that's where the birth of resentment really came from. It was because I fell in love with music at such a young age, and I felt like my love for that was just drained from me. I lost the passion to continue doing it, and I really lost my spirit at that point in my life because I was dealing with so much at such a young age. And that's another reason why I wrote the book as well, because I think that was overlooked. She's a child, and so it can't be that bad, it can't be that serious. But it was building, and it ended up becoming a huge part of the traumas that I had to face as an adult and the things that I had to overcome as an adult.
But I always looked at you, first off, as a confident person. And it's like you knew my story just now, because when I was going to high school, I always said I was going to change my nose because my maiden name is Cortentia Moses, but my classmate called me Cortentia Noses. So I experienced that. So I definitely understand what you were talking about. And there's one part in the book where you said there was a rumor going around, which was spread by your best friend. I'm surprised that you were pregnant. That's why you ended up in the hospital, because of everything that overwhelmed you. You basically tried to take your life. You also made mention to persons that commit suicide that they're looking for attention, and you rightfully said they're not looking for attention because they're dead.
Yeah.
So what impact did that have on you, and how do you speak to persons who may be going through something like you went through?
I've had the opportunity, fortunately and unfortunately, to actually talk to girls about who are on the brink of suicide. And a lot of the times, that's exactly what they get. They get this cry for help that they're trying to extend, and the people around them simply looking at it as, well, you're just seeking attention. Well, there's no joy in the pain that comes from needing to make that cry in the first place. There's no attention to be had if you're dead. So that aspect of it I just don't get. And what I say to girls now is that no matter how difficult life gets, it is always worth living.
Yes.
Even if you have to find the most minute thing, and I practice this often. I spend a lot of the time looking at the ground, and sometimes people laugh. I spend a lot of time counting in my head, but I will observe even a bug and just the way that it's functioning, and that alone, that creation, and the fact that it just seems so carefree, and it's living its life. But in my mind, I'm like, even that bug probably has problems within its own bug circle, and he's just treading it along, doing his thing, trying to find food for his family, trying to survive. But that's what we're all doing. We're all just trying to make it here, and we're all just trying to survive. And when we have to really look at things in a larger scope, when we sit down, if we had to blindfold everyone and have everyone share their stories, we would be surprised when we remove those blindfolds, which stories belong to whom, because some of them are so similar to the things that we've gone through ourselves. So I try to explain to them that your problems are not unique. They may feel that way, but there is some young girl out there who is feeling exactly the way you are right at this moment. And what would you tell her? Because a lot of the times, as funny as it might sound, the people who are on the brink of suicide can often give the best advice to people who are feeling the exact same way. So it's, how do I get you to have that introspection? How do I get you to pull that out of yourself? And so that's the work that I do with my philanthropy and, some of the foundations that I work with.
Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say, in listening to you, Jermul, you're like a life force. It's just very telling that having gone through trauma that you went through, you've actually turned it into something of a mission of sorts.
Yes.
And that's incredibly inspiring. I can't tell you enough
Thank you.
how much I appreciate what you are doing. All right, so let's talk about your work with the foundations of philanthropy that you mentioned.
Yes. So, like I said, a few years back, I went to South Africa, and I love cooking. So I decided I want to go there. I want to volunteer in a kitchen. I didn't really know exactly where I was going to go. I just knew just anywhere where I'm working with young people, young women. And I ended up at a girls' orphanage called St. George's. And the relationships that I built there with these young girls, with the women working in the kitchen, I mean, there was no division where economics was concerned, where status was concerned, where color, creed, none of these things were concerned. It was just a need, and I'm there to help you fulfill this need. And I loved it so much that I was like, I have to go back, and I'm not going to allow things like money or time to stop me. Sometimes I think that we sit back and we go, there's nothing I can do because I can't make a financial contribution. There's always a contribution that can be made. Sometimes all these young girls need is someone on the other end of a phone line to speak to. And so I decided that I was gonna reach out after I left there. I reached out in the US, I reached out in Canada, and I started finding myself around some very like-minded young women. And we all got together and we decided, okay, we're gonna pick these foundations that really focus on less politics, more about helping, and we're gonna go exactly where we're needed, and we're not gonna let anything stop us. So that's how it started for me, and now I'm ready to do the same thing here. I wanna go into the schools and I wanna talk to the young girls And I want to let them know that they're not alone in the struggles that they're facing, and that they don't have to look at each other as each other's competition, because there is so much strength and power in sisterhood.
Yes.
There is so much beauty in the things that make us different, but there is so much power in the things that make us alike.
You are correct indeed. I want to know, before we go though, about this heartbreaking surgery. What type of surgery? Because I know you were an athlete.
Yeah.
So what type of surgery was it?
So I was trying to get pregnant. I was married and I was trying to conceive, and unfortunately I found out that one of my fallopian tubes was totally blocked and it was destroyed. That had to be removed. Thank you. That had to be removed, and at the time it was devastating. But my surgeon was amazing, and she, explained the process to me, that you can still have a child with just one tube. It's just now a 50-50 chance. That's fine.
Okay.
But then I prep myself and I go into surgery, and on the day of that surgery, when I woke up to the news that both of my tubes were gone, because the other one was so damaged by scar tissue. Scar tissue was wrapping itself around the existing tube, and so they had to make the decision to remove that as well. Had they not, I would have been back on that table in less than 3 months, or I would have been dead, walking around with that inside of me. So it was that moment, actually, that was the impetus to me finally putting pen to paper, and to me finally going to Africa, because I was putting that off for so long. And finally I was like, you know what, I've lost this opportunity now to have this child of my own, and then I go to this place and I have 24 young girls that I feel are my babies.
Yeah.
So I felt like I don't feel like God took something from me. I feel like he simply gave it to me in a different version, in a different form, because my maternal instincts are always there. That nurturing side of me is always there. So that was the situation, and it was going into that surgery on that day, and I tell this, I mentioned this in the book as well, and there's this moment where I'm laying on that bed and they're pushing me in down the hallway, and there's all these lights down the hallway, and I can smell the linens. All of my senses were heightened. And I tilt my head back after all of these nurses kept reassuring me that everything was going to be okay. And I tilt my head back, and what I saw was it was like a heaven-sent scene from a movie. It was these women, this band of women led by this surgeon and these nurses. And they're women, strong and powerful and confident and caring. And they were all there for me. They were all there to support and assist a woman who they had never met, who they had no connection with, aside from she needs us right now. And that's what this is really about. There is a need for sisterhood.
Yes.
And we don't do ourselves any favors when we push women aside, and when we brag about doing everything on our own. And I don't have female friends, and I only deal with men and things like that. There's nothing to brag about with that, because a woman who has no female friends is one of the loneliest women on the planet, whether she wants to admit it or not.
That's true.
But it was that moment where I went, okay, this is it. Whatever happens, Lord, if I wake up, I'm putting pen to paper, you just guide me with the words.